All right. I got to tell you, we're back, by the way, from the break. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. I got to tell you, we are in a situation in which things are so abjectly out of control here. Because what we're seeing, and I posted a lot of this up on our Facebook page and up on our website. You can find those two places by going to americasvoicenow.org, and you can also find it by going to facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Now, what I talked about earlier during the week was the fact that many of the information, or much of the information, I should say, that's coming into our national security databases is absolutely unlawful in its nature. But in order to cover their tracks, because there is still a thing called the Constitution that they fear. And mark my words and make no mistake about it, they fear the Constitution. They fear the fact that we have a Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure without probable cause. And yet they continue to do what they do anyway. Now, understand what this means. They cannot legally, constitutionally, do what they're doing. So how do they get around that? Well, very interesting. Here's what they're doing. What they're doing is they are monitoring, in our NSA, they're monitoring what they can within the scope of the Patriot Act and other subsequent NDAA acts and so forth, because they have lawful cover for that. Whether you agree that it's lawful cover is not material right at the moment. What does matter is they call it lawful cover, okay? But what they're doing where they cannot get lawful cover is cheating. And here's how they're doing it. They are monitoring, in the United States, they're monitoring the English over in the UK. And they're having the UK monitor the United States with their version of Carnivore and Echelon. And by the way, make no mistake about it, I don't think if you think those are conspiracy tinfoil hat tools that are out there, mark my words, go look them up. They are real, and they're as real as the nose on your face. But here's what they're doing. They are capturing information in the domestic United States in these international taps that they've put on all of these fiber optic cables that run across the ocean, and they are capturing and monitoring everyone in foreign countries. Those foreign countries, by the same token, are monitoring our nation, and then they're switching this information back and forth. So that way they've got plausible deniability, and they can say, we didn't, as the NSA can turn around and say, we're not monitoring average Americans. The English can say, we're not monitoring our citizenry in Britain. And it's a lie. They are. How do we know? Well, I'm glad that you asked that question. Revealed on Friday, the NSA has paid $150 million to Britain's GCHQ. Now, for the record, GCHQ is the British equivalent of the NSA. And so, for the past 3 years, they have been funding our NSA, and our federal government has been funding the British NSA. What are they funding them for? It's not like the Britons need our money to monitor their citizens. See, that's the rub. We're paying them to monitor our own citizens. If you read this article, you'll be stunned and blown away by some of the quotes that are out there. Now, a lot of this stuff is coming around as a result of the Snowden revelations. So, these are revelations that are contradicting British denials that they're monitoring their own citizens or doing the NSA's dirty work for them on American citizens. And you see, this is proof that it's happening. And, everyone who's sitting out there calling Snowden a traitor, and by the way, I want to tell you about, I'm going to digress for a moment. The I got to find this story because it's amazing. A senator edited WikiLeaks. Oh, here we go. No, that's not it either. A senator edited WikiLeaks on Snowden to name him as a traitor. In other words, if you don't know what WikiLeaks is, you can go in and it's like a public database, and people who have authoritative information can go in there and monitor and change it to make it more accurate. This guy changed the WikiLeaks name or titling from dissident, an American dissident, to an American traitor. And they tracked the IP address back, and it was a U.S. senator. Are you flippin' kidding me? Is that how the rule of law works? The Senate declares you a traitor, and you are, without proof, without a court. Folks, I'm telling you, we are so close to the end of freedom and liberty in America, you have no idea how deep this thing goes. So let me get back on my topic here about what the NSA is doing in paying the British. The document that The Guardian revealed, which is part of the Snowden revelations, reveals the nature of the relationship between these two organizations. And here's some of the statements that are actually in. These are quotes right out of the document. Raised a number of issues with regard to meeting the NSA's minimum expectations, attesting that the GCHQ, the British NSA, still remains short of the full NSA ask. In other words, this is the demands that the NSA has placed on the British government for this $150 million. The document declares that GCHQ's intent and the extent to which it wants to harvest phone data and internet traffic is aimed to, quote, and this is their words, not mine, exploit any phone, anywhere, anytime. Exploit. Use the word exploit, folks. Tell me what that means. You see, they know what they're doing. We know what they're doing. The rest of America is asleep at the switch. They have no clue what's going on. None. But for those of us who do know, we recognize and understand how dangerous this is. And I got to tell you, if we don't get a handle on this, and I mean immediately, pronto mondo, if not sooner, we are done as a nation. Because we cannot live in a society where we are monitored 24/7, where there is no such expectation of privacy, where everything that you do, every phone call, every internet search, everything on your email is monitored and observed. You know, I do a series of interviews around the country with other radio stations, and these radio stations ask me to come on and talk about how surveillance changes the nature of our interactions day in and day out with each other. And it's important that you understand it, and I'm going to explain it to you right now how it does. When you have a group of individuals who are friendly, these are people who know each other well. You know, you're out there in the evening having a good time. You're at a restaurant somewhere, and you're having dinner and a drink and a glass of wine, and you're having friendly discussions. If someone said to you, "We're videotaping your entire dinner," i.e., reality TV, it would immediately, and you can prove this, by the way, to yourself. You don't need me to tell you how this works. You can prove it to yourself. It immediately changes the tone, the tenor, and the nature of your conversation. It changes everything about the way that you communicate together as friends. If you don't know which neighbor is monitoring you and spying on you for government, if you don't know that telephone sitting on your hip is a listening device, If you don't know that that camera on the front of your laptop is a video monitoring device, or the television set that you just bought can be turned on remotely by someone in the NSA or some other federal agency to watch you while you watch it, everything changes. Everything. You and your spouse, you and your significant other, you don't have normal conversations like you would before. You'll step outside to talk about things that you may be accused of later. Think about it. I want you to prove this to yourselves. I'm challenging you. I'm challenging everyone listening to this broadcast. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, the next time you're sitting in a group, go to a girl's wedding, whatever they call, like a bachelor, whatever they call it for women, or to a baby's shower, or a bridal shower, or go to a bachelor party, and tell those people that you're going to videotape and audio record everything that happens that night. Go to dinner with your friends, and I want you to do a little trick. I'm going to prove this to you right now, or you're going to prove it to yourself. I want you to take your phone off your hip, and I want you to set it on the table face up. Right in the middle of dinner when no one is suspecting what you're going to do. And then I want you to say to the entire table, for the record, the NSA and other law enforcement agencies are monitoring our dinner right now. They're videotaping and audio taping everything that we say. Now I want you to observe the results. Tell me there won't be a change. Tell me there won't be an entire modification of the tone and the tenor and the topics which you discuss. Tell me that you won't change a word that you would have used before. Tell me that you won't modify the way that you were going to address something before. Tell me that you won't avoid certain topics. Tell me that you won't joke around with each other like you would have before. You see, everything changes when you're being monitored. Everything. What you read, what you see, what you listen to, what you talk about, what you communicate with in friendship with others. Do you want further proof? Ask anyone who has ever lived under a totalitarian regime. If you can't find somebody who lived as recently under the KGB or under East Germany, then find somebody who was around in World War II when they were under Nazi occupation. And ask them how everything changed when those totalitarian organizations took control and power. What you're going to find is that they're going to tell you that when they wanted to have a conversation, they went outside and they took a walk in the park because there they could have a discussion where no one could be listening. You, on the other hand, may think no one's listening, but if you're wearing a cell phone on your hip, they are. They are listening to you. And they don't need the phone to be on. They don't need a call to be connected. In fact, they don't even need the battery to be in there. These new phones that are out right now have an internal lithium-ion battery that allows them to remotely turn that phone on and listen to your conversations. This is not tinfoil hat, people. This is not my paranoid delusional fears. Go look it up. The proof is out there. It is everywhere around you. If you don't listen, if you don't know, it's because you don't want to know. If you're not aware of what's happening to you, it's because you choose to be ignorant. And if you choose to be ignorant, then you are not only harming yourselves, you're harming your family, you're harming your community, you're harming your state, you're harming your nation, and you're damaging everything that we as a nation believe in. You see, we are at a time right now where everything that we do is being monitored. You cannot find one valuable iota of, or 1 iota of value. Let me rephrase that. You cannot find 1 iota of value that comes from a dossier being built on every American for their telephone calls, the content therein, their internet searches, their email content, the content of their hard drives at home. There's no value in that for the average American. There's no value in the database that's being built under Obamacare to identify your income, which is already available to the IRS. But now, you see, that information will be available to thousands upon thousands of non-government agencies, to consultants, your health records, your income, the number of people in your family, the size of the farm that you have, how much money you made out of side business versus how much you made at the work that you do for an employer. All of this is being used or built and thrown into these massive dossiers and databases to be used at a later date for selective prosecution and selective persecution. And let me tell you something. It is persecution. Make no mistake about this. What we're looking at here is not run-of-the-mill curiosity. This information is being developed, stored, and maintained to be used against you later. How do you know that you'll be one of the ones that it's going to be used against? Well, you don't. And that's the problem. You see, everything that you say and do, once collected, can be taken in or out of context to make it seem as if you had a nefarious or evil intent. An email that is completely innocuous between you and a friend can be taken out of context. And a selected paragraph or sentence or snippet can be taken from that and misused. How do we know that? Well, I mean, we know, and here's a perfect example of it. We know that Brandon Raub, who posted on a social networking page a statement, first of all, he was raided by a bunch of individuals who took him under armed raid. And he finally got a day in court the other day, and a federal judge has refused to dismiss from a lawsuit several FBI and Secret Service agents, as well as local police officers who were involved in his arrest. You see, he's filing a lawsuit against them. The officers that confronted Brandon Raub, who is a U.S. veteran, by the way, he expressed criticism of the United States government on a social networking page. Listen, guys, this is scary territory. They arrested Raub, and they kept him in custody for an evaluation in a psychiatric facility, based on a long-distance opinion from Michael Campbell, who was a psychotherapist hired by the local county where he lived. When the case came before a judge, the judge ruled that the concerns raised by the officers were, listen, and this is the judge's statement, quote, so devoid of any factual allegations that it could not be reasonably expected to give rise to a case or controversy. Let me say that for you again. This is a federal judge. And here's what he said about the evidence that the law enforcement brought to him. That the evidence was, quote, so devoid of any factual allegations that it could not be reasonably expected to give rise to a case or controversy. And yet, he went through a mental evaluation. He was held in custody. He was forced to undergo forced drug treatment. Not drug treatment for the use of drugs. They pumped him full of drugs. I mean, and now Raub has then sued the officers for taking him into custody. And these officers have said, well, we have immunity from prosecution because we were following the law. We were following orders. And the judge said, oh, no, you don't. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from here. This is a quote. Brandon Raub's case exposes the seedy underbelly of a governmental system that continues to target military veterans for expressing their discontent over America's rapid transition to a police state. That's John Whitehead from the president of the Rutherford Institute. Here's another one. While such targeting of veterans and dissidents, and listen to the language that they're using here, dissidents. Dissidents was what the words we used to use for freedom fighters in Russia, in East Germany, in Nazi Germany. Do you hear the language, people? You are a dissident. You're an insurgent. Quote, while such targeting of veterans and dissidents is problematic enough, for any government official to suggest that they shouldn't be held accountable for violating a citizen's rights on the grounds that they were unaware of the Constitution's prohibitions makes a mockery of our so-called system of representative government. End quote. I'm sorry, not end quote. Excuse me. More. Thankfully, Judge Hudson has recognized this imbalance and ensured that Brandon Raub will get his day in court, suing these officers. Henry Hudson is a U.S. District Judge. He says essentially that there is not enough information at this point in the case to dismiss the law enforcement defendants. I got to tell you, Raub is a decorated Marine. He was taken into custody by, quote, a swarm of FBI, Secret Service, and local police, and forcibly be detained in a psychiatric ward for a week because he played some controversial song lyrics and political views that he put up on his Facebook page. Hey, guys, are you not listening? Are you not seeing? Are you unaware of the fact that everything that you do is being supervised, monitored? They tried to label Raub as mentally ill, and they involuntarily committed him into a psychiatric unit. You see, Raub was an example for me and you. Raub was taken down to show us what happens if you cross the line, if you step up, if you stand up. Stand up, you get your head lopped off. That's the message. Ladies and gentlemen, we now live in a police state. It is unmistakable. There can be no doubt. We live in a police state. You are now a subject and no longer a citizen. You are now a criminal until you prove otherwise. You are now a dissident. You are now an insurgent. You are now a domestic terrorist until you can prove otherwise. And to make matters worse, as I covered in our first segment, you're not entitled to the proof to show that you're not. We are in extraordinarily dangerous times. Our nation has fallen to treason. Our nation has fallen to tyranny. It exists. It is here now. It is living in your living room. It is sleeping in your bedroom. It is in your kitchen cabinets. It is in your automobile. It is in the work that you do every day. It's in your computer. It's in your children's schools. It's in your local community and your city and law enforcement everywhere around you. The tyranny and the treason is everywhere. The question is, can we stop it before it's too late? I dare say I have my doubts. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. Find us at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. and find this and every other program that we do on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Share this information and news and these videos with your friends. Wake up, America, because time is critically short. Thanks for joining with us today. We'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early.